Okay, just a little history as I see it. There's something called the Sanctuary School of Space that really rose in the 1980s, maybe the late 70s, that was starting to think about space warfare. Pretty much after the debates about SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, and other things. But when people thought about space, they tended to look at space warfare as a prelude to nuclear warfare, mostly because any targets that were in space, whether they be the ground segment, the link, or the space segment itself, were tied to strategic deterrence and nuclear deterrence. Usually, command and control communications like the Milstar satellite, or missile warning, DSP, and other things like that. And most people thought that space warfare, if there was going to be such a thing, would have no value other than for a prelude to a first strike with nuclear weapons. The problem with this in this line of thinking, it was probably pretty good at the end of the Cold War, but in the 1990s we started to get space as a warfighting domain, specifically in the U.S. military after the Persian Gulf War. There was something called TENCAP, which is Technical Applications for nuclear, or not nuclear, national systems, that tried to take the very strategic space things that we had and made them, tried to make them more useful to the warfighter on the ground for operational and maybe even tactical things. And as they did that, as the global positioning system became more ubiquitous and was useful for movement and maneuver in air, land, and sea, when missile warning satellites started to give us tactical and operational warning for, theater missiles and stuff like that, there was a new reason to make attacks in space that would give operational advantages to whoever shot something out of orbit. So space warfare became something that was thinkable and useful on a tactical and operational point of view. So next slide. But the Sanctuary School and its assumption that nuclear war was inevitable after a space attack, mostly because of the targets that were available in the 1980s were only useful as a prelude to nuclear attack. It went away. But the Sanctuary School as a philosophy and as a political stance really still exists. And I just pulled a couple of quotes from the latest National Defense Strategy from October. And it says, in the cyber and space domains, the risk of inadvertent escalation is particularly high due to unclear norms of behavior, escalation thresholds, complex domain interactions, new capabilities, and really using a lot of sort of alarmist, I would argue, statements about just how dangerous conflict in space and space deterrence is. But instead of saying, hey, look, the adversary might target strategic defense systems or strategic warning systems, they start looking at things like global positioning systems, the GPS constellation, which they claim here at the last quote here is that they support military power and daily civilian life. That's true, but I would argue that the GPS constellation is not as vitally significant today if it was attacked, especially piecemeal, as it would be if the Soviet Union would have attacked nuclear command and control and communications assets in space in the late 1980s. So the Sanctuary School still exists.